Welcome to Dark Truths, Religion Uncovered, where we explore the tension between ancient holiness and modern leniency. Tonight, we examine a critical shift that has hollowed out the essence of moral transformation, the point when forgiveness became disconnected from the concept of change. In ancient theology, grace was never a passive concept. It was disruptive. It invaded lives, dismantled destructive habits, and called for personal reform. Forgiveness was not a conclusion. It marked the beginning of a new chapter. God continually forgave Israel, but each act of mercy came with an expectation of obedience. Grace restored the covenant, ensuring that holiness could thrive. Jesus forgave but also commanded transformation, as seen in his call to go and sin no more. This command isn't a threat. It charts a new course. Grace made it possible for people to embrace holiness through restored relationships, not by merely excusing behavior. However, in modern belief systems, grace is often seen as an exemption. Forgiveness is viewed as the closure rather than an ongoing calling. Sin may be acknowledged, but it often isn't confronted, fostering a culture where change is encouraged but not expected. While this approach may seem merciful, ancient theology would label it a distortion of grace. Scripture doesn't separate grace from transformation. Instead, it teaches that grace trains righteousness, disciplines desires, and reorients the will. When grace loses its transformative power, holiness becomes an option instead of a standard. Ancient believers were wary of cheap grace because it dulled their conscience. Forgiveness without the accompanying transformation leads to complacency. Modern belief frequently resists the notion of holiness because it can sound restrictive. It confronts our desires and limits personal autonomy, so belief shifts to portray grace as acceptance, devoid of demands. But acceptance without transformation leaves individuals unchanged. Ancient theology teaches us that grace doesn't simply affirm who we are, it recreates who we become. When grace is misunderstood, obedience diminishes, discipline seems unnecessary, and reverence weakens. Faith risks becoming sentimental. Scripture warns explicitly against this perspective. Shall we continue in sin so that grace may abound? Grace empowers us to resist indulgence, not embrace it. Modern belief often shies away from this tension, viewing it as judgmental. However, holiness is not judgment. It is a process of alignment that restores integrity between belief and behavior. Ancient believers pursued holiness not to earn grace, but because grace had already transformed their lives. In contrast, modern believers tend to receive grace without a response. Yet grace that does not lead to change is reduced to mere comfort. Tonight's truth is a piercing one. Faith that celebrates forgiveness while resisting transformation has fundamentally misunderstood grace. Grace does not lower the standard. It elevates the possibility of living differently. Ancient theology recognized that forgiveness without transformation was incomplete. Unfortunately, modern belief often forgets this because genuine transformation is costly. However, it is that very cost which adds depth to grace. As we conclude, we leave you with a question that ancient theology would press upon contemporary belief without hesitation. If grace truly restores, why does so much faith remain unchanged? Thank you for joining us on Dark Truths, Religion Uncovered. We invite you to share your thoughts below. Has grace been diluted into mere permission? Or does belief still permit forgiveness to engage in the difficult work of true transformation?